All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the November 27th meeting of the Lunenburg Planning Board. We are meeting here at Town Hall, so if you are watching us at home and wish to come on down, we're here. This meeting is also available on Zoom, and it is being recorded. If you're at home and want to comment, you'll either need to come on down to Town Hall or log into the Zoom, either with your telephone or with your computer, and the information for that is on the agenda. And I believe that's everything I'm supposed to say before we start the meeting. Very good. So that begins the meeting, and we'll open with if there's any general public comment. And just please make sure that you watch I know you know that, but I say it out loud anyway, the Zoom. And if you are on Zoom, go ahead, and if you do want to comment, go ahead and use that raise hand feature to let us know, because that's a great way to tell us that you want to be heard. Seeing no public comment, we have two public hearings scheduled for tonight, continuances. One for 171 Arbor Street, one for 255 Sunny Hill Road. The public hearing for 171 Arbor Street, they have requested a continuance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when have they asked to be continued to?
Our next planning board meeting, the December 11th.
Okay. So I would be looking for a motion to continue the meeting for, there's no reason to get back into that, to continue the public hearing for 171 Arbor Street to December 11th at 6:05 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Very good. Well, that's one item off the agenda. And now we'll move on to the public hearing for the stormwater permit for 255 Sunny Hill Road.
Good evening.
Evening.
For the record, Justin LeClaire, McCarty Engineering, here on behalf of the client for Sunny Hill Road. So since we last spoke, we did receive a comment letter from Graves Engineering, and we did provide responses to them. I believe an email was sent to you and Jeff Walsh of Graves Engineering.
Yep.
I just want to make sure you got that.
Got those, yep.
So Graves Engineering only provided 7 comments. I'll run through them very quickly because a lot of them were simple. Comment 1 was regarding the stormwater and the storm sewer system. GEI has no issues relative to compliance with these regulations, was the first comment. The second comment was the plan should include the site zoning information. So over here on the plan, you see the zone table for each lot shown,
Recording in progress.
Whoops.
both on this one here, in addition to lot 5. In regards to the HydroCAD analysis that was done in the stormwater management, GEI reviewed the hydrology computations and found them to be in order. They found us to be in compliance with the stormwater handbook and standards as reasonable. Comment 5 was regarding the operation and maintenance plan. They just asked us to define what a major storm event and significant storm events were regarding the maintenance of the P-stone diaphragm, as well as the rain garden. So we did go in and update the O&M plan. Essentially, a major storm event is a 2-year storm event which 3.24 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period occurs. So we just stated that in the O&M so the contractors and the owners know what they should be looking for when to maintain these BMPs. Comment 6 excuse me, was in regards to spillway elevations for the rain gardens. They just wanted to see them on the plan. So, in addition to having the zone table, where we noted the proposed rain gardens, just as an example here, for proposed lot 2 rain garden, incorporate 3 trees, the shrubs, and refer to the construction details. Just underneath that, we added spillway elevation equals for each road. That way it's on the plan, the contractor can see it, and they don't have to look through the report or anything like that. And then Lastly, they did not review this for compliance with notice of intent with conservation approval. Again, since we last saw you, we did go in front of conservation. I'll speak briefly to that as well. And just to remind the board, the conservation jurisdiction is only pertains to Lot 5, the one on Leominster Road. So we met with them. We discussed. Conservation had concerns about the buffer zone impact that we did have.
Just gonna bring us closer.
Yeah.
So we can start talking about it.
No, thank you.
You can see it, and we can all hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we requested a continuance with the Conservation Commission. We do have a site walk scheduled with them prior to their next hearing. So this lot still is being worked on, but besides that, GEI had no issues with the overall stormwater design of the project. So with that, if the planning board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. I'll turn to the members of the board and ask, based on the responses to Graves Engineering, previous public comment, everything else, the things we've noticed, what questions do we have?
Any?
Not yet.
Don't let me steal your thunder. I have a question. The introduction, so let me ask this one first. Were there two different stormwater reports prepared for conservation versus planning?
No.
No.
Nope, same one was submitted to conservation as it was to planning.
Okay, very good. I was concerned about a discoordination of files submitted. So I read through the introduction. It says you've got an 18-acre site, and then that you're only doing a hydraulic analysis of 3.
Yes. So the reason being is when we do the design, we look at what we're altering on site. So in the case of this piece here, it's only the limit of grading. The reason we do that, and it's probably easier to see on this. So you can see limit of grading here, limit of tree line, what we're altering between existing and proposed. When we look at the analysis, we only compare the alteration because even though the site is much larger, none of this is changing between pre and post. This is all woods pre, this is all being left as woods post. So when you compute that into the program, it'll give you the same number. We're only looking at the changes. So up here at the front of the site, we've modeled this all as woods undeveloped. And then the post condition, well, now we have a house, driveway, grass. Ideally, on the backside of the septic, this would be grown back in as a brush. It wouldn't be a manicured lawn. So we look at that change from before construction to after construction. And then the same thing regarding the development of Lot 5. We look at this as pre-condition, undeveloped, and then post-condition. Same thing. We have a driveway, we have house, we have limit of clearing, so we have some grass. So that's your standard practice when doing drainage designs on any project, whether it's single-family home, subdivision, large-scale commercial, anything of that nature.
I do have a follow-up question on something you said, and we do have members of the public here, we have members of the public in Zoom. There will absolutely be opportunity for comment and discussion tonight as well. I want to just be clear about that. So one thing you said that I'm trying to wrap my mind around a little is the idea of ideally the slope will be allowed to turn back to brush.
Yeah.
And and having viewed the past meetings on my Mullen report, my Mullen rule thing, everything else, that was mentioned similarly then. What I'm trying to wrap my mind around is what if the owners don't? And you may be able to help me with this. We do not have Mr. Harris with us tonight, our interim land use director.
Yep.
So can can they just mow it regardless and kind of create a bigger flow issue than we're anticipating, or not? Or how does that work in this scenario?
Not ideally. The difference that we show in the model is between what is a lawn and what is natural. So a lawn is your manicured, loam, hydro seed, nice green growth. On the backside of the septics, where it's a steep slope, so ideally you're not getting a ride-in mower or anything like that to mow that, that'll go back to a more natural growth. That won't be your nice neighbor, front yard type lawn. So the difference between those curve numbers is de minimis. We just like to try to be as realistic with the model as we can.
And so you predicted that in your model based on the anticipated difficulty of maintaining a section?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the way, specifically where we modeled it was on 3 lots on Sunny Hill, on the backside of the septic, where it's way in the back of the property, no one's gonna be down there. Ideally, it's a 3-to-1 slope that goes, in this case, 20 feet in grade change. I don't think anyone's gonna be mowing that type of slope to have a lawn that you can't use. So, those are some of the things that we take into consideration when we're looking at the model.
All right.
Where up in the front yard, you would have grass. You would mow as much as you can there.
All right, thank you. Other questions from?
Follow up on that one.
Oh, great.
How does the Board of Health feel about revegetating over a septic system? Do they want you to have brush and trees
On the backside,
anywhere on a septic system?
typically on the front, you would loam and seed, you put your loam back down, but on the backside, they don't have a preference.
But I think, so you modeled lot 5, and we got a 260-something page PDF with mostly just HydroCAD on lot 5. Did you model this other portion, this other 15 acres?
No, that HydroCAD model in the stormwater analysis that was submitted was for the entire proposed project. So the 3 lots you see in front of you here and the one on Leominster Shirley Road. It took all that into consideration.
I disagree. I spent a good amount of time looking at it, and every time, every area of analysis that was mentioned was 2.99 or 2.98 something acres. There was no analysis that I saw of this portion of the property.
So that 2.99 is, going back to when I first started, is the entire outer boundary of this. And it's within the limit of work of this lot, so it's not the entire parcel. It's only where we're proposing alteration, and only where we're proposing alteration.
So,
I'm starting to get it.
so 2.99 acres is the total altered area?
Yeah, it's a total limit of work on the proposed development.
All right.
And I know this one, because we have one that is a good distance away from the rest of it, I know sometimes it can get disconnected, but it is one model. We're looking at this here and that on Leominster Road together.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
All right. If there's other thoughts or questions from the board, at this point, I'll be happy to take them, and if not, I'll move on to hear from the public.
I do want to make one more comment. I do know that, that one of the members of the public is a Conservation Commissioner. And I want to mention the apparent loophole in my mind, I guess, I'll put it that way. The stormwater standards allow for riverfront area disturbance up to 5,000 square feet or 10% of the total parent lot. in a normal subdivision. Since you guys subdivided through 81P, which is the A&R process, we were not allowed to deny that. We voiced our concerns, but we were not allowed to deny that. Now, my concern also stands with, I watched the Conservation Commission meeting that you presented to, and you presented it as a 1053-3E limited project, right?
Yes.
So I don't think that, considering that currently the entire parcel is under common ownership as one lot, I don't think that my understanding allows you to apply under the 53-3E for that newly created subdivided lot. And it's out of the planning board's hands at this point. However, back into the Wetlands Protection Act, they do mention alternatives analysis, and I don't think that, I haven't seen any alternatives analysis here at Planning Board. I don't know if you submitted any.
So for Plan Board, it's not required, which is why it was not submitted as part of the notice of intent package. For Lot 5, an alternatives analysis was provided to the commission.
Okay. So my understanding of the 53-3E states planning board involvement three different times in that small section, just the E section. So there is some apparent lack of coordination going on here. I don't know if it's because we don't have a land use director right now, if we don't have, our conservation administrator and agent just started today, full-time, no longer interims. So I'm wondering if this is some kind of an internal thing that may have been caught had we had that staff in place, but as it sits right now, and I've done a lot of homework looking into this, it doesn't appear to me that the person you're working for is as entitled to that lot as they seem to feel they are, I guess. And that's the best way I can put it.
Try not to mix both conservation and a plan here, obviously, but the project was submitted that way based on the local regulations. Regarding the riverfront area itself, we are under that 10% threshold, and that is noted in the application. But in addition, that limited project, that where the driveway is, that is the only access to that lot without going through wetlands. So it could go both ways. We wanted to make sure that it was filed properly, both.
Sure.
And just so you know, no comment was raised to us from DEP regarding our interpretation of the limited access.
Okay, so before I address the DEP comment, you're aware of creating your own hardship?
Yes.
Okay, so by submitting an A&R to the planning board, something that we could not refuse, and we brought up the illusory frontage that appeared to be there, and looking at the statute and the case law, planning board really has no ability to deny that, but it did appear to me and others to be illusory frontage, and the 10% you reference, I think, is from 10.58, which is the riverfront area.
Yes.
Had you gone through a regular subdivision process for this, that would have applied to this project, and it's not only 10%, it's 5,000 square feet or 10%, whichever is greater. Now, I looked at what was available to me at the EEOE portal for the data, the notice of intent. Apparently, it states that you're altering 11,000 square feet, which is more than twice the 5,000. You don't have a DEP number yet, and what I read their comment was is they wanted more information on the drainage report for the parent lot. That's what I saw online.
In regards to that comment online, that is something that we're legally looking at with them.
Okay, so,
So that is, so in regards to Lot 5, there was concerns raised, we acknowledged them, we understand them, we're currently working through those with both the commission and DEP. That's where I would leave that lot, and we fully know that.
Okay. Appreciate it. And now you mention lawyers. So I think that at this point, it would behoove the Conservation Commission to at least run this by town council and the building commissioner and the interim land use director. And I only bring that up at the planning board meetings simply because planning is mentioned in the 10.533E subsection that you applied for as limited project. 3 different times in that clause, it states coordination with planning board, which I'll repeat, was nullified by the 81P A&R application. And that's all I really had to say about it.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Anything else from the board? No. All right, I would turn to members of the public. This is a public hearing, and public comment is both welcome and encouraged at such a hearing. Please come on up to the microphone and make sure you do share your name and address for the record. And also, thank you for taking the time to come in.
My name is Ken Patton. I live at 290 Leominster Road, and that's right adjacent to this Lot 5. And I thank the board for letting me speak here tonight. I spoke at the last planning board meeting, and I spoke at the Conservation Commission meeting. Since the last planning board meeting, I've had the opportunity to get the plans and study them, and so personally I know more what's going on now, how it's going to affect me, and at the last planning board meeting I spoke about how much stormwater comes through my property, which is a lot. And I did have the opportunity to walk my property with the contractor. Both Ed and Stefan were out at the site, so I took them through my property. I showed them where the drainage is. There's a good-sized swale on the west side of my property that's not shown on the plans, but it's there, and it handles a lot of water. So I just want to really make the point that there's a lot of water that comes through there, and I think there's actually added water coming down that swale because there's pipes up in the field that possibly from old road drainage, and I get that from an engineer who was out there, but there's water just bubbling up out of the field, and it's like a fire hose at certain times. If any of you were old timers and you went sliding up on Drums Hill, you'd know about the water because the snow was always wet there. You didn't want to slide into this body of water that was always up there. So there's possibly more water than what the acreage would calculate. I have some disagreements with the design. For the amount of water that comes through there, this proposed pea stone diaphragm just will not do it. I mean, when there's a storm, a thunderstorm, or sometimes you have a lot of snow up in the field, you get a rainstorm, there's a big flush that comes down through my property, through the swale, coming off the hill, and this little diaphragm here is going to do nothing. So I have a problem with that, unless I'm reading this wrong. But I also like to make a point that if the Conservation Commission comes up with some requirements that might take some additional space away from the contractor, that would make it more difficult to put any kind of stormwater structures around the house, because, I mean, this place just barely has been shoehorned into this site, is what it looks like to me. It kind of looks like the stars all aligned, and it just fit. So, I don't think I don't think there's much room for error here if there needs to be some stormwater structures here. All I see is a proposed dry well, which I know takes the water off the roof, and that barely fits in between the house and the property line. So I see a lot of problems with this design. I know there's a lot of problems with stormwater coming down that hill, because I've been there for 40 years. I've had 40 years of water coming off that hill, and just when it starts barreling across my backyard, it's just another day for me. But I'm not so sure what it's going to do to this property. And, you know, this pea stone bed, I've got a catch basin on the south side of my property, and I've just got a photo here of what this catch basin can look like after a storm. You see the catch basin?
Is that all silt built up around it?
Yeah, so that great big white house that, come back here. You want to take the phones?
Oh, sure, we can do it that way. Thank you.
Now, is that all from the road? Is that all from the road salt? Sand?
No, that's, are you aware that the big white house, beautiful house built on the south side of my, it's at the very bottom of Sunny Hill Road at Leominster Road. So that's just water coming off of that, water coming off of that site. But it's just that's what happens when you think that you're going to put down a pea stone bed and it's going to collect water. It's going to get, in a year or two, it's going to get pretty well covered up. So I just see, I'm just looking for answers with the design so that I could feel comfortable that things are going to work the way they're supposed to. Thank you very much.
So what I'd like to do is respond to a couple things I've heard just by matter of this is how the process works. And then I'd like to invite the applicant's engineer to come up to respond as well. In terms of if conservation were to change the amount of land that can be used or something like that, if there's any change to these plans, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they have to come back to us, correct? That's my understanding. If there's any change to the stormwater plans, they have to come back, and maybe it's a de minimis change, maybe it's not, but they have to come back before the board.
I believe so.
So if there's a change that prevents the plans from being built as shown here and as discussed, they will have to come back before the board. So it will either be this or there'll be another discussion. If we were to approve this, let me rephrase, then it would be this or they'd have to come back. There is maintenance required in the various documentation and then recorded on the deed for maintaining the pea stone diaphragm and things like that for buildup. I don't have that number exactly in front of me that is in here. I'm not in a position to say, yes, of course, that's sufficient or not. I'm not an engineer, but there is a process for that. Now, what I would like to do is invite the applicant's engineer come up to respond some more, but if you have anything else you want to say before he comes up, I completely welcome that as well. I'm not trying to shut you down, I'm trying to give you the information I have.
No, I appreciate the time that I've had here. You know, I've made my points, just to be real quick and reiterate, there's a lot of water coming off the hill. I don't have a very good feeling about what I see for the design, and I think they could be hurting for space if they have to put any structures in for the stormwater. That's about it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please, do come up and help us understand, whatever.
So, easiest one to answer is regarding the maintenance. In our O&M plan, I'm just going to read
So
a sentence.
I'm going to ask, just for the sake of being extremely clear for the people in the room and for those at home, what is an O&M plan?
Operation and maintenance plan. So this is what the contractor, and then once it's sold to the homeowner and it gets recorded with the deed, the homeowner is responsible for.
Mhm.
And this is per the town's recommendation that gets recorded with the deed. So for P-zone diaphragm, P-zone filter layer shall be inspected every 6 months and after every major storm event. We did clarify that storm event. Major storm event is any storm greater than two-year storm, which is 3.2 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. So after every major storm event, to verify no erosion has occurred and the system is functioning as desired. So the owner every 6 months will be responsible to go out and check the P-zone diaphragm, make sure that it's not filled with sedimentation and silt, that's not clogged. If it is clogged, they do have to maintain it by taking out the first few inches of stone in the filter fabric and put down new filter fabric and new stone. That is in the operation and maintenance manual. That's probably the easiest one to answer right now. It's written out, spelled out, and in addition, there is a log with the O&M plan that states what and how, and then to fill it out. Regarding the rainfall, I did talk to the contractor before I got here. He did meet Mr. Patton out there and they walked the site. So based on what we were told, mitigation things that we can do to make sure that that water still maintains its natural path, that we are not drastically changing anything, is we can easily provide, and these are just examples, under drains under the driveway, we can culvert it, make sure that that water does not get blocked and backed up onto the abutting properties. I did have this discussion with the owner, and they're open to fixing the potential drainage issue because there are multiple pipes that discharge directly onto their property that should not be. But the client's willing to work to fix those drainage issues while being able to construct the driveway. Regarding the again, with the Conservation Commission, I know it's separate. If we do have to make any changes based on them or DEP's comments, we would provide the plan board a revised set. Which brings me into what ideally I would hope would happen tonight is an approval for the stormwater permit. Understand that some of the plan board members are apprehensive with the Lot 5. We would be open to a special condition that would state construction of Lot 5 shall not be started until an order of conditions is received from conservation, which we have to get anyway. So it's just an added layer for the planning board that the 3 up on Sunny Hill, which again are outside the jurisdiction of the commission, and per your third-party review engineer's comment letter, they have no issue with this design, that I don't see why these 3 couldn't be permitted. Again, knowing that there's still work to be done on the 4th house lot, that if the plan board would be open to it, we'd be open to that type of special condition.
All right, great. Do we have other questions from the board on this narrow avenue of the topic that's been discussed here before we invite more members of the public up?
This narrow topic.
But this concern voiced, explanation, kind of continuing this thought process.
This one's, I'm not quite sure who this question's for. Part of it might be for the board. What kind of, like, penalties or requirements are there for maintenance of stormwater? Like, once it's handed off to the homeowner, whoever controls that, what is in place to ensure that these maintenance is
Who
happening?
enforces it?
Yeah. I don't know if we have any idea here on the board or if there's anything spelled out further in documentations, because if you're handing this off to a private individual, it does feel like, yeah, it's written on paper, that's what we have to do, but nobody cares. Nobody does anything with it afterward.
So the one I can only speak to is Lot 5, because it's within conservation's jurisdiction. I don't know what mechanics the planning board has, but regarding Lot 5, which is the one concerned with the runoff, they could issue an enforcement order if it's not maintained, or if there becomes issues. So that's their mechanism that can be used. Again, regarding the planning board, I don't know if you guys have anything similar to that, but I know if it's recorded with the deed in the registry, it's a legal document that has to be met.
It has to be enforced by somebody that's legal, quite
I
honestly.
do not,
None of us are.
and this is where, this is part of the challenge of having an interim land use director versus a permanent land, or as permanent as any position as land use director. So if you're a certified urban planner out there watching, and you want to help the town of Lunenburg, boy, do I have a way you can help and make a living doing it. Send that resume in, please. Now, if memory serves, I do not believe that there's anyone going out and inspecting and saying, hey, are you doing X right now in a timely fashion?
Sure.
That said, the deed I know the technical term may not be deed restriction, but the recording on the deed of this expectation, to my understanding, does mean that does make it a real requirement. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I can't, whether or not there's a statutory penalty involved, I don't know. And I can't say for sure that having that requirement would open one up to civil litigation if one wasn't following through. That's kind of my loose understanding.
Okay.
But Mr. Wilsner, please take what I just said with like
Sure.
the world's biggest grain of salt, because I'm not an expert on this.
I will follow up on the engineer's comment, is that if any of the stormwater devices impact the wetlands behind those 3 lots, then they could also face an order of conditions.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, in the event that happens as well.
And we are in the interesting position where, as a town, we are struggling with all towns are struggling with stormwater management because it's a big issue, as we know. We do have some of the most rigorous stormwater requirements around right now. I don't know if that feels good or not, to know that we're sitting here questioning some of the strengths of our bylaw and knowing that it may be one of the best around, so.
And might I just add
Yeah,
one
please.
more thing? In regards to the amount of rainfall, the way that we design this, we take the most extreme precipitation data that's out there. And that's all we can design off, by what is recorded, studied, analyzed, and put back out to us. So in the 100-year, so the worst rainfall event that we designed for, which is the 100-year, we're 0.9 CFS above existing. So less than 1 CFS, which is a de minimis change.
And again, a CFS being a cubic feet per second?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And again, that's based off the most extreme precipitation that we can design for. Obviously, with the surges and some of the crazy rainfall we've had, we can't predict that. So we do the next best thing. And that's what we're required to design for all projects.
Great, thank you.
That actually kind of leads into what my other question was. When, I think this is more of just like a technical question, when these stormwater models are done, are they just taking rainfall into effect? Like the gentleman was speaking about the amount of stormwater that comes through his property, which then presumably flows into this property as additional above and beyond what would be calculated by just the stormwater.
So our design is solely based on the rainfall event for that area.
Sure.
We can't take into consideration, or just not knowing how far back it goes, where there's certain point discharges, things of that nature. That everything that is designed should be designed to either meet stormwater standards,
Sure.
if required to, or in certain cases, such as single-family homes or smaller developments, say 2 or 3 lots, it's maximum extent practical. Case in point here, maximum extent practical is under a CFS
Sure.
of flow for us. So it's hard to analyze that far upstream,
Right.
but it does assume that there's a heavy amount of rainfall coming to your property.
Sure.
Regarding, flip it back over. Regarding the swale back here and over here, I know there's a catch basin, like Mr. Patton said, that pipes and discharges here. I believe it's a 6-inch pipe. I believe in addition there's a 4-inch pipe in the driveway that comes out. Those are things that, since we know, we can provide, again, certain mitigation tools or certain design features
Yeah.
to make sure that that flow still maintains its natural course down. Hopefully that gives you a little bit.
In bits and pieces, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. And I want to thank everyone on the board and here as well for their patience, knowing that there's a lot of, that members of the public are expressing questions and concern. I'm trying to be methodical about making sure we're addressing those and being maybe a little slower than we have to be.
Sure.
To make sure our voices are heard and thoughts are exchanged well. So thank you. I'm going to turn to more members of the public now. Please. And after this, I see we have someone in Zoom, and our friend in Zoom, if you're going to want to speak, you will be the next member of the public.
So thanks for letting me speak. I'm in a butter, 297 Sunny Hill Road,
Thank you.
south side of this lot.
And just give us your name as well, please.
David Beverly,
Thank you.
been there 25 years, 26 years. My notice from McCarthy Engineering says the proposed site includes the construction of a single-family home. No S, home. That means one. This is new to me. I've been out of commission. Seems like we got multiple homes going in. Is this the case? Question 1.
Yes. Well
Okay.
proposed.
So is this document, should this have been written differently for future reference?
Was that a notification for the notice of intent hearing or for this stormwater hearing? I don't believe we give out notices for the stormwater, so that must have been for the notice of intent.
This is the notice of intent, I believe,
So
but I
that-
do
that-
have one for the stormwater as well.
Well, according to the way that they've applied, that I think is correct.
But
Because
isn't
in-
it slightly misleading?
So, Because the notice of,
Single-family home,
so because the notice of intent is for the wetlands incursion,
It goes to the conservation, right,
and there's
Yes,
only
wetlands.
one single-family home that meets,
proposing
oh,
alteration.
this is the Lot 5 that I keep hearing about?
Yes.
That's that one.
So are there 4 or 5 lots?
There's 4 others, there's 3 that the other side of that plan shows with housing development on
So
them.
excuse my ignorance, I've been a little out of
Oh.
commission for a while. I'm just getting into this. So there's 3 on Sunny Hill Road. Where's the 4th?
So there's 4 lots on Sunny Hill Road, and they're only proposing to develop 3 at this moment, I believe because of a drainage easement issue.
Makes sense. There's a storm drain right at the end of my driveway, and it runs over. So, okay, so let's leave that as it is. My next comment would be, after 25 years, I've learned one thing. Don't touch anything on those slopes. You try to clean things up, you try to make it look good, you're going to get erosion. Just a point of interest. Been there, done that. I have no particular beef with development. Is there a connection between these lots from the Sunny Hill Road down to the, so we're not going to, I've heard crazy stuff.
Well, not as proposed.
There's no road going through the back there and all this other, okay, I've heard that. But that's good to know. I guess that's all I have to say. I am concerned that the homeowners won't appreciate what they're getting into. My home, when it was built, had an interceptor drain in the ground around it. Anyone can go by my home, it's right across from the water tower. There's a drain system that protects the house. About 10 years ago, the water main broke right in front of my house. 300,000 gallons of water went through my property in one night. Not a drop of water in the basement. Do these homes have an interceptor drain? Is that in the plan?
Standard practice for construction for foundation drain.
Excellent.
Standard practice for a foundation drain, I believe is what was said,
yes. Thank you for echoing that, Mr. Allison.
people at home.
Because that
Yep.
could be a lot of heartache. I think that's all I have. Just one more note, I guess. There's a lot of wildlife back there. Maybe people don't know. Otters, bears, bobcat, fox, all of that. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Conservation Commission will see this.
And to that end, comments about the wildlife and everything else are extremely welcome. My father worked for Mass Fish and Game his entire career, so I have strong feelings about conservation, and so those comments are certainly welcome. I do want to just remind all the public watching that what we can look at in this hearing as a board, now, public comment, people can say what they're going to say, and that's not a problem. Wonderful. What we can look at as a board is more limited. So while I appreciate the comments, we can't really consider the wildlife impact, per se, in this context. Thank you. And we have a member of the public in Zoom as well. I don't know if they're looking to speak, but if they are, they could certainly put up their hand at any point, or we could even invite them to unmute if you want, and then they may take us up on it, and if not, that's fine. And we'll give that 1 second. And while we're waiting, if the member of the public does start speaking, I am going to interrupt you, just because of the difficulties getting Zoom working.
Don't you love technology?
Well, I do, because it means they can be here where they might not otherwise, but it certainly gives us some more challenges.
So, In regards to the erosion, as you know, it's over an acre disturbance. A SWIP will have to be compiled, so it's stormwater pollution prevention plan. Go through all the steps on how to mitigate and eliminate any potential erosion. In there are mechanisms that if something happens, this is the steps you take to fix it. So, as part of the SWIP, there are inspections that are done on site. Whoever the designated inspector is goes out, reviews any of the stormwater features, temporary basins, silt fence, straw wall, things like that, and they report. If they have a blowout of a silt fence, they notify a contractor that it needs to be repaired, and they have a certain time frame. So there are tools that are used and required by contractors to mitigate any erosion. Again, you can only do so much preventive measures. If something happens, it happens, but again, there are steps in place to fix that. So that's just in regards to moving forward with the construction process. Over an acre, SWIP has to be filed, and that there's steps that are taken to mitigate that erosion.
Great. Thank you.
So.
And I don't think we've heard from our friends on Zoom, so I'm assuming they're not looking to speak, which is fine. Not a problem at all. All right. Seeing if there's any other public comment in the room. Seeing, oh. No, okay. All right, seeing none. I'll turn back to the board again for further questions, concerns, thoughts on moving forward.
I'd just like to narrate another alternative from moving forward, is the possibility that the limited project status that the applicant has applied to conservation for could be denied. Quite possibly could be denied by the Conservation Commission. They could not allow that as a limited project, which wouldn't disallow the use of the lot. It would just severely inconvenience the developer about building anything there, because they would have to conform to 1058 of the Wetlands Protection Act, which deals with riverfront area. And again, their proposed development, as we're looking at it now, for Lot 5 alone, is 11,000 plus square feet of disturbance in the riverfront area. And any other way they permit this is a maximum allowance of 5,000 square feet, or 10%, whichever is greater for the lot. And if you're going to claim the one lot there, it may be 5,000 square feet kills that project in my mind. And I just want that to be known, because that's not a given right now at this point. And again, just to repeat, we are deficient on staff. We just had our conservation administrator and agent start today, so, and we have no land use director who coordinates between conservation and planning. So I feel that it's more than valid to bring that up at this point. And just as a reminder, that's not a done deal. There may or may not be development on Leominster Road with this project. And they've already covered their bases as well, because they did soil testing on this portion for 5 lots. So if that Lot 5 gets shot down by conservation, then I can't imagine that there wouldn't be a reconfiguration and a new A&R come before us for this remaining piece. Which also, our regulations state that there's supposed to be a digital copy of the A&R submitted, and I don't think I've been able to find it. Is that available to us?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to confirm that it was submitted.
Regarding the A&R, and this is a question to the board as well, not the previous meeting, because we did request a continuance for this until we met with conservation the one before. The planning board did vote to endorse it, I haven't seen anything come across my end on if it was signed. Annie, I know you weren't here for that meeting. It was the interim planner.
Yep.
So I don't know if there was communication ever to you that that was to be signed and ready to be recorded. Do you know?
I'm pretty sure we signed it that night at the meeting, and you took it with you, didn't you? No?
I thought that was the Mylar that was signed and it had to be finished being signed and it was up, because I had like a Sunny Hill Mylar up front in my office, so I believe it was picked up, but not by you.
Okay.
It was picked up
Nope.
by someone else,
In
but,
fact, it was picked up. I remember
Okay.
Lisa Norman told me that someone picked it up.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure you guys had the submitted A&R. You just didn't have a digital copy of the endorsed
Right.
one. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, is that the case? Do we have a digital copy of it?
I am 90% sure that we have
Okay.
it,
That's fine.
but yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. We've heard comments and questions from the board. They have been, they've received answers. We've heard comments and questions from the public, both tonight and at the last meeting. They have received answers. So now I turn to the board. Mr. Allison, I know you've expressed some concern about if we have to look at this for stormwater, but you've expressed to me some concerns on if if everything is correctly in a row for us to move forward with this. And I would ask about that, because that would affect if we look to close the hearing tonight, or if we look to continue it until we can confer with Mr. Harris, our interim land use director.
So I don't think we're ready to sign off on this right yet, quite honestly. I have more issues with the application itself. I just wanted to bring those issues that I've already brought out first, so that there could be some discussion about them if there was any interest in having that discussion. But I mean, I've got more questions about the application, so.
About the stormwater application?
So the stormwater checklist, the checklist for stormwater report, Mass DEP, and is that specific to this application, or is that part of the application that goes with the NOI?
No, that is standard in stormwater design. So the drainage analysis that was submitted to the planning board is the identical one submitted to conservation. The reason being is that we had to look at this project as a whole, because in this case, it is under common ownership. So we couldn't analyze just the Sunny Hill as one drainage analysis and just Leominster Road as a separate. So that stormwater checklist does apply to the entire project.
Okay. But there's a separate requirement within the notice of intent for a stormwater analysis, and then we've got the local bylaw.
So there's a stormwater handbook, which is the state guidance, and then in addition, Lunenburg has local requirements in their stormwater design. The stormwater handbook is typically 8% TSS, 0.5 water quality bond. Lunenburg, with the updated MS4, is 9% TSS and 1 inch. So this was designed to exceed the stormwater handbook and meet the town of Lunenburg's requirements.
So further on that on the checklist for stormwater report, standard 7 for redevelopments and other projects subject to the standards only to the maximum extent practicable. It lists limited project. Now, that limited project that's specified on the stormwater checklist, is that the same limited project that you've applied for the notice of
No.
intent? Okay.
No, that's separate.
Okay. Very good. That was an important one. Let me go back to, well, yeah, I do. So can we go back to the other lot, the lot 5? Oh, and you don't have those. So your pre-development condition shows a TC, which is a time of concentration path, going directly through your proposed house.
Yes.
Now, I'll note that I did look at the soil logs, and it looked like every single one of them punched through in a restrictive layer into pure sand.
Yes.
Every single soil log that you did?
I would have to go back and look. The majority of our soil logs were on the Sunny Hill side, because at that time we were looking at septic testing, and I think there was 30-something of them, but
20 deeps and 10 perks.
yes. So they were all fairly consistent.
Right. They looked it.
Yep.
So that would answer the question about curtain drains. Excuse me, if you've got that, if you've got those recharge units that are below that restrictive layer.
Yep.
It's just gonna pour right out of them. However, that's only going to be for the roof recharge, right? That's only gonna be accessible to roof leaders.
So I'll let you continue what your next part of that.
Well, that's okay. You've got an infiltration unit uphill from your proposed house, adjacent to a river. And you've got everybody telling you that you've got all kinds of water going down there, and in fact, you yourself showed the precondition, the time of concentration, the fastest travel path was down that swale, which goes directly through your proposed house.
Yes.
Now, my other comment was that you did punch through a restrictive layer into very, very well-drained soils that are 15 to 20 feet elevated from the river, right? So I didn't notice that you had any perk test results. I assume they were all 2 minutes an inch?
No, they were, there was a varying, I'd have to look at the Title V plans to.
Okay. So they were.
But just because it's sandy material doesn't mean it's an instant.
It was listed as medium sand. It kind of
Ye-
does.
Yes, but even then, there's still variations of silt that can be in it and fines in it that will limit your part.
Okay. Yeah. This is just not an appropriate site for a house, in my opinion. So, I don't think I have any further comments on the application. I asked that one, I asked that one, I asked those two. Yeah, I think I'm out of questions right now.
Let the record show Mr. Ellison is out of questions for now.
Thank you.
And I say that because you are full of good questions, and I appreciate them a great deal.
Thank you.
So I would ask us, again, I turn to us, we have, this hearing is about very specifically stormwater and mitigation thereof and everything else, and the proposed plans. So within that context, have we heard enough and are satisfied to close the hearing, or is there more info we feel we still need and need to continue the hearing?
There's a public comment.
Please come up to the microphone so we can hear you. Thank you.
Ken Patton, 290 Leominster Road. Just one thing I want to comment on is that the water coming down Leominster Road off of Sunny Hill, and this is street drainage, comes down Leominster Road, goes past my driveway. There's a fire hydrant right there, and the water just dumps right into Lot 5. So, you know, you just get these other places where water shows up. So just, I wanted to mention that, and in particular, I want the contractor to hear that so that if this project does go forward, they'll know that's something they should be dealing with a berm or however they do it. But there's a lot of water coming down Leominster Road, because it's kind of all uphill as you head towards Leominster, and it comes down and just dumps into Lot 5. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will let you know you were getting a nod of acknowledgement as well, but if you want to come up and speak to it, please. Oh, okay, great. Do we wish to close the hearing? Do we wish to continue to get any other info from Mr. Harris that we feel we may need,
Are
or for other
we
reasons?
under any time constraint to complete?
There is no legal time, the only time constraint is trying to be expedient within our work as town government. There is no legal time constraint, to my understanding.
Okay. And then the conservation, you're having another conservation meeting. Is that, am I wrong, or is that only about Lot 5?
It's only about Lot 5.
Okay.
So, of this project, the only lot that's within conservation jurisdiction is Lot 5 here.
Okay.
The other three are outside the buffer, outside the riverfront, no jurisdiction for conservation.
Okay.
To flip it the other way, if the board decides to move forward with a vote, this lot still needs conservation approval. Even if tonight, you guys say, yes, per your stormwater bylaws, you've met the criteria, it all meets, we still need to go in front of the commission because we're within their jurisdiction. Going back to what I said earlier, if the board wants an extra layer of protection, they could put a special condition that prior to construction of Lot 5, an order condition must be obtained. Again, it's a full circle because we will need that regardless of how we go forward with this lot. And again, that's only for Lot 5.
Okay.
The other three lots, per your third-party review engineer's comment, found the design to be in compliance and within reason of both Mass Stormwater Handbook as well as the local regs. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that just because the planning board may okay it on this end, this lot still needs another approval prior to construction.
Ms. Aubrey, did you get the wording of the special condition that the applicant has said they'd be amenable to? No, that's fine. I was just asking, that was not a leading, like, why haven't you? I was just going to, I started typing and missed some of it, and then was going to be like, oh, if you have it, I don't.
I don't believe so.
Okay, cool. No worries. Could we have your I mean, we may or may not go with it
No,
if we
no,
vote for
and that's
approval,
fine.
but could I get your wording again during this period to have in my notes?
Yes. We would be amenable to a special condition that states the construction of Lot 5 shall not begin until an order of conditions is received from the Town of Lunenburg Conservation Commission.
Until, oh, I'll take your words again, because I'm not a fast typer.
An order of conditions
Yep.
is received from the Town of Lunenburg Conservation Commission.
I'll pretend what I typed is English, because I can turn it into that eventually.
No one can see it.
Well, I can, and I'm a little embarrassed by it, but, all right. How do we feel? I'm not looking to I'm not trying to lead us one way or another here. Do we feel that we have enough information to make a decision? Do we feel that we need to check with Mr. Harris on anything as our paid expert, or do we also wish to continue for some other reason?
I like both the things you said, but also to repeat something I said, and I've actually got it in front of me now. Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, EEA, Data Portal, Wetlands Notice of Intent Project Information for the applicant at 255 Sunny Hill Road. The comments online say, residential development in RA and BZ, additional information required, stormwater report for entire development of parent lot. Now, if DEP is saying that they don't have enough information, then I'm going to say that we don't have enough information based on that. And I would certainly, I mean, he did have something to say about it last time I mentioned it, so.
So in regards to that comment, they're asking us to review the parent lot as the original drum lot from the 70s. That has not been a practice.
I don't think that's the case.
It is.
I really doubt it, because the parent lot, because this is an A&R subdivision, and it's all into common ownership right now, and this is another thing that we need to be clarified by Richard, or town council, or an environmental agent, somebody that's well-versed in the Wetlands Protection Act, because that's where this is coming from, I believe, right?
No, we've been in contact with Mass DEP regarding this. They're looking for us to look at the original drum lot from 77 that was carved off in 2013. A piece was sold to a different owner, different applicant, different engineer, different contractor in 13, and additional pieces were sold off in 14 to different owner, different contractor, different engineer, different developer. They want us to include those 4 lots in our design. That is the communication we've had back and forth with Mass DEP.
Oh, well,
And we find that,
that makes no sense. And I would agree with you if
Thank
that
you.
is the case. If that is the case, I would agree with you that
It-
that is ridiculous.
yes, thank you. And that is, those
Okay.
are the emails we've had back and forth.
I'm not the biggest fan of the state.
This is my shocked face.
So we're just going back and forth with them right now regarding that.
Understandable. Okay, well, I mean, understandable as it can be, I guess.
Yeah, in regards to this and how we normally do it, we take a big lot like this that our client has bought, and in this case, there's 6 total parcels. There's lots 1 through 5 that you guys saw, as well as the parcel A that was on the other side of the brook. So within the Mass Stormwater Handbook, it states 5 to 9, not discharge into a critical area, which this isn't deemed to be a critical area per their definition, only needs to meet the Mass Stormwater Handbook to the maximum extent practical. And that's where we get into the design of our pre-post is slightly exceeding, but we've met the town's 1-inch water quality volume, we've met the town's 90% TSS. That is how we've gone about it. For as long as I've been there, for as long as my supervisor's been there. So the state's ask is what we're currently back and forth with them on, again, regarding the conservation approval.
And will that information be available in our conservation office as well? The DEP response?
I believe the Lunenburg Conservation Commission was on those emails.
Super.
If not, I would be happy to provide them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I turn to us and say, what next? We've received a lot of information, a lot of nuance and complexity here for sure, but we also have engineering report, the peer review engineering saying, looks solid for what it is. Again, I'm not trying to sway us one way or another with this, I'm just trying to give a holistic view.
No, I crinkled my face. So our engineering, our peer engineer reviews this for stormwater compliance. That's it. Doesn't look at Wetlands Protection Act.
No, but our,
Is that correct? Doesn't look at wetlands?
Yes, and Graves Engineer did state they did not review it in
Right.
the view of that.
So the peer review had nothing to do with the wetlands,
nope,
nothing to
Well-
do with the with the appropriateness of trying to get this lot developed. It had nothing to do with that. I might like to ask if we could have him review it for that.
Is that within the purview of our stormwater bylaw, though? I hear you.
I'm not sure.
I
I'm probably not, quite honestly.
Yeah, I share. No, I am not a big fan, on the personal level, I am not a big fan of developing lots that are kind of edge cases for development. That said, we have bylaws, and state law, et cetera, to follow in these decisions. So I don't know that this being maybe an edge case, that seems more for conservation, that seems more for other groups where we're looking at something limited. But if we think there's a potential issue here with our bylaw, I think it makes sense then to wait for Mr. Harris to consult with us as well.
Might just
Please.
add, so your review engineer reviewed this lot in regards to stormwater and found it to be in compliance with Stormwater Handbook and local regs.
As a limited project for the stormwater.
He just looked at it as stormwater.
5 to 9, it did.
Yeah, yes, within that credential in the Stormwater Handbook, yes. Your third-party review engineer did not review it in regards to the Wetland Protection Act, which is your buffer zones in your resource areas, which is not jurisdictional to the planning board. So, again, regarding this lot, the biggest hang-up is it allowed under Conservation Commission? Both the WPA, or Wetland Protection Act, as well as the town of Lunenburg's local Conservation Commission regulations. That's what we're going through with them right now. Again, from a stormwater standpoint and per your bylaws and the handbook, this development meets that criteria according to your third-party review engineer. So, I don't mean to be a dead horse. Regardless of what if the plan board approves this, one way or the other, this lot in particular still needs conservation approval. Regardless of what plan board says tonight. If you guys say, yep, it's a great project, go, conservation can turn around and say, nope, you can't do it because of these things in our regs and within the wetland protection. And that's the end of that lot. So I just, like I said, I don't mean to be a dead horse here. I just want to make sure it's clear that.
You said you had a site plan walkthrough scheduled?
That is going to be scheduled with them this week. They meet,
12,
it's this
December 12, I believe.
12? I
think
didn't
so.
know if it was the 12th or the 6th.
Is it 6?
It was
Oh,
December 6th.
I stand corrected.
Thank you.
Thank
So-
you.
Yeah, it's the 6th.
Thank you,
Thank-
Mary. So, we'll be in touch to coordinate that site walk with them.
So I do feel the conversation is getting a little cyclical. So at this point, I think I will be more direct and turn to the board and say, I would like to see a motion, and that motion could be to continue because we have concerns. That motion could be to close the public hearing so we can deliberate and come to a decision. But if there's not new topics, I think it may make sense to move one way or the other.
If I could find our agenda, I'd make the motion. I move that we continue the stormwater hearing to the next planning board meeting at 6:05,
December 11th.
December 11th, at 6:05.
I will second. I was going to say that as well.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, does that work for you, that meeting?
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're right, thank you.
Probably should have asked.
No, ideally that should work with meeting with the commission on the 6th. At
Okay.
least that way we can
Sorry.
hopefully come back with a clearer picture for you guys on how it's going to proceed.
And I'm in regular discussion with Mr. Harris, so I'm sure he's going to review this meeting anyway, but I will also be in discussion with him as well to make sure, as any other board member can be as well. I just can't speak for them.
Yeah.
So that he can hopefully address any concerns that may or may not exist and I'm saying, because again, I can't read minds, before the next meeting, so we come in with full knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that was, we did move to second, and I think we did vote. Let's do that officially, because it did get interrupted. We have the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Perfect.
All right. So continue to
December 11th.
December 11th. We'll see you then.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for those watching at home. Things sometimes go a little slower because we want to make sure that we get it right. 1 second. That's better. So that closes our public hearings, and now we're on to board discussions. And what you'll see on the agenda is potential future bylaw updates, and then it lists our sign bylaw, our solar energy systems bylaw, our aquifer protection district, and the scenic roads, which we do not have. While we've embraced the Massachusetts state law about scenic roads, we don't have a local bylaw. And I put this on the agenda because I brought up at a previous meeting the notion that, to me, it made sense that we should, knowing that the master plan is coming, the finalized master plan, we're 24 months out from, and then that's going to give us some real good info for what the town, what the residents of this town want it to be in the future. And we all seem to agree with the notion that it made sense before that happens to try to shore up some of our other bylaws and really kind of make sure they're squared away so that once we have that, the master plan, we can work on enacting the will of the voters as opposed to, I mean, everything's the will of the voters in the end, it goes through town meeting, but as opposed to what is effectively kind of cleanup of some bylaws that are proving challenging in the immediate nature. So I just wanted to turn this as an open discussion to the board and say, what do we want to look at next? A little more info. The Aquifer Protection District was, have we met since town meeting? No. Special? Oh, okay. We were there, but again, for the sake of completeness, the Aquifer Protection District was deferred to Springtown meeting. Mr. Harris did say to me that he was going to look at doing effectively a line-by-line comparison of the proposed bylaw and the current bylaw to help the public at large and us basically really identify the changes. And hopefully that will help people understand. He was also going to reach out to some contacts at DEP to figure out, there was that question about why is there Zone 2 within Zone 1 that was brought up as a concern, and that's not us, that's the map data we were given. And kind of find out what the deal was with that, and the Water District Commissioner has volunteered to be of service as well in kind of wrapping our minds around all of this and addressing things, so I was going to reach out to him as well as another avenue for what's going on here. Just for some kind of what's happened in the background since. What do we want to look at next? I think I get, speaking with members of the town, I get the idea there's a real appetite out there for continued work to shore up our problematic bylaws and make things work better for the community. And we kind of have to look at aquifer before spring. What else, what do we want to tackle next? What are we thinking? And it's not probably going to be linear, as we've seen with, we kind of start working on one bylaw, then we need to wait for feedback from other groups, we might then look at another. but looking to a Springtown meeting, what do you want to do? And if you have questions about the bylaws and what some of the concerns are that have been voiced, I can address those. I'm sure Mr. Allison and others can address those as well.
I know I briefly, before town meeting, asked some questions about scenic road, and what, kind of enforcement mechanisms do we have? And I think the general consensus was, we don't. People will do it, and then there'll be no recourse. Do we know if any other nearby towns or Massachusetts towns have their own local scenic roads bylaws, and what are their enforcement mechanisms?
Yes, they have them.
Okay,
Not every town does.
sure.
So Massachusetts state law says basically you can embrace this concept of scenic roads, and then you can make a scenic road bylaw.
Okay.
We've done the first part.
I see.
We've said, yes, we have scenic roads, and here's a list of them.
Yep.
And what we haven't done is the second part, which is formalizing the process, penalties if appropriate, anything like that.
Sure.
So, and there are towns that have done that, and we could certainly, if, any of these we look at process-wise, what we'll probably do is, I asked Adam for some wisdom before he left, and paraphrasing his comment, but not too much, was that 90% of planning is thievery. Of bylaw writing for planning is thievery. You look at what other places have done,
Oh, sure.
you take the parts you like, then you feed them through the correct avenues, town council, the actual people who know how bylaws should exist in a more technical sense, to then make it law as a legal reading. So we'd absolutely be looking at what other towns do for any of these, but yes, other towns have done scenic road bylaws.
All right. Basically the same way it even works writing state-level things. We just look at the other states and be like, oh, that'll work for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
we make the changes we want, and then other towns look at that and go, oh,
Yeah.
that's a good change, we're gonna incorporate that into ours when they do something.
Okay.
I actually did a good amount of research when we did have the land use director for scenic roads, and a lot of towns like Princeton, Sterling, they have their own kind of set of fines. And I mean, I know it's Mass General law is enforceable by the tree warden as well. But some of them had fines, and then some of them got kind of creative with their remediation tactics of replacing certain trees in certain areas if they were to be taken down, as well as stone walls too. So I can kind of collect that again of the different bylaws and distribute if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be
That would
great.
be great.
I'll also mention, in preparation for this, I made a quick look. Town of Harvard, since 1974, has had a bylaw for scenic roads. Westford has one since 95. Sudbury, Carlisle, they also have them. Concord has a great description of what it is to have a bylaw and how to get a bylaw, how to put it together, how to enforce it, and what it can do for you. And I wish I had written the website down, but Concord, Mass, and if you just Google scenic road Concord, Mass, it will show up. And I'm sure Concord itself has a great scenic road bylaw. They have a great everything. Concord and Acton are my two go-to when I'm looking for any kind of a model. Concord and Acton are both extremely efficient in crafting their bylaws, and Groton, by the way, is the other town that I go look for on how can we have more groups of volunteers, because they have like 40 and we have like 15, but that's aside the point. But again, And they vary. I mean, some of them are one page, very simple, straightforward. Others of them are 8 to 10 pages. So it runs the gamut.
Now, I might push back against some of this myself as an individual, and even though I'm someone who has spoken in favor of really wanting to look at scenic roads, I wonder, and I don't know the answer, I wonder if scenic roads are better left until after the master planning process is complete, because I feel like the info we get from there is going to do a lot of informing for what towns, what roads, or what sections of town the populace may want considered scenic roads, or how they may want these things addressed. Or if things, from what I'm hearing at the meetings, I would guess that in the future, we would end up looking at things like cluster development or form-based zoning to meet some of the needs that people are identifying. If that's the case, I wonder if things like, I don't know enough to know if things like form-based zoning would supersede or would either supersede scenic roads or be something that has to mesh tightly with it. I don't know one way or another. I'm not quite educated enough on that. So I wonder if scenic roads is something we could end up looking at now and then having to look at again right after, like after master planning's done. Maybe even if we would have to, that's worth it. Or maybe we feel there's a good enough idea here that we could put something together and then just slot in more roads later if that was appropriate. I don't know myself.
Anybody?
I mean, I think that makes sense to, if we're looking at just what's listed under board discussions, we've lots of things that we could talk about before we talk about scenic roads. But I think we would still be able to talk about scenic roads before master plan comes to an end. So it's possible we could put that on a back burner till we discuss more pressing issues such as the aquifer protection district and then also the solar energy systems, because that was addressed at town meeting as well. As we added the bylaw for the larger structures, we should look at the current bylaws we have and update those. That seemed to be a hot issue.
There did seem to be a lot of passion about that. As a little bit of background on why I included these, and for the love of God, if you have other ideas, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list. This was meant to be an illustrative list. A little bit of background. The signs is there because our sign bylaw is kind of awful. And I'm not saying I don't really have a personal opinion on it, just everyone who interacts with our sign bylaw says, oh God, this has to be updated, and it's hard to update a sign bylaw. But frankly, I have a lot of faith in this iteration of the planning board to accomplish hard work. Because we're full of, those who are here are thoughtful and approach with a lot of good ideas and determination. Solar was there based on our identification of the solar bylaw having some big issues like the 10 kilowatt hour defining large scale, when I just got an estimate for my house, a plan for my house that would put 10 kilowatt hours on my roof. Now, that wouldn't qualify because rooftop's different, but just for the idea of large scale. Aquifer protection, personally, I don't think we have a choice. That has to happen because we're still working on that regardless. And scenic roads I have there as well. So this isn't meant to be, again, based on discussions we've had. This isn't meant to be exhaustive, but that's kind of the reasoning behind each one. I don't have a strong preference what we look at next myself.
I'd like to make a comment that currently we have section 254.9 Water Supply Protection District, and it's not aquifer protection.
Thank you.
But I don't know if the intent was intentional or if it was just a typo. But I mean, if I don't know if the idea was to create an aquifer protection rather than a water supply.
No, the idea was me texting Annie
Okay,
going,
that's fine.
oh, wait, can you throw this on the agenda too?
That's fine. Sure.
And I did it via voice in my car on the way to my next appointment, so.
Well, so on that note, our bylaws and our maps, they say and show what they say and show. It really doesn't matter. What's enforceable is what DEP says.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as our maps and our protection districts go unupdated, then we are misinforming our citizens about our local regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly. That's it. That's all. As far as, that's where I'm going to end that conversation right there.
So, unsurprisingly, I hear vigorous support for the water supply protection. What Mr. Harris is already going to look at doing that work. I'm going to reach out to the Water District Commissioner. If the board does not mind, I was also going to drop an email to the constituents that have previously emailed me about this and basically say, hey, do you want to be updated about what we're doing? Now, of course, they can tune into any meeting and watch, but in the interest of being as open as possible, I think reaching out and saying, hey, we are looking at this, here's the next steps, is something I intended to do, as long as the invitation to keep engaging if they wish. But I think somewhat there, we're going to be waiting on some work from Mr. Harris when that becomes available. And if you disagree with that assessment, please say so. Then what would we want to look at next after that? Are we thinking so? No one seems enthused about signs, which is not surprising.
I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like I have had just as many interactions about our sign bylaw being terrible
Oh.
as you may have had.
Let me rephrase. I did not hear anyone on the board saying, woo-hoo, let's address signs.
No, I think that's important because
Okay.
it's not the first, I've had more than one occasion where that's been mentioned.
Well, what do we want to look at next? We don't need to vote. We got to come to some kind of agreement.
I just feel like water and solar would be the two that we should go to first.
I'm fine with that. I'm open.
Beyond that doesn't matter.
So I'll say that both of those are going to be maybe a bigger bite than we're intending or we understand them to be. For one, solar is one of the things that's protected by the state and is kind of dictated by the state. But again, our bylaw is much different than the model was. I don't know how much different, but it was considerably different. And then the Water Supply Protection District, just the simple fact that we have a water district separate from the town, it's a confusing issue. We can't obligate the commissioners to come to this meeting, and they can't obligate us to go to their meeting. There have been, I'm not going to get into that. There's a lot of moving parts there, and at the end of the day, quite honestly, it's basically all dictated by DEP, and anything else that we've got in our bylaw apparently is just fluff, because part of the reason that we were going to eliminate a lot of the things that are currently in our bylaw was simply because they're there and they haven't been enforced. Which, in my mind, and I'll repeat it again, is the stupidest reason to remove a bylaw. Just because we don't enforce it. Well, hello, why don't you start enforcing it? And, there's a statute of limitations on building permits for 6 years. There's a 10-year statute of limitations on certain zoning violations. So regardless of if and when we look at that, I think that currently, we probably should take a look at what our bylaws say that haven't been enforced, and look to see if there's any sort of a way that, one, we're inclined to take up the mantle and enforce our bylaws, or two, if maybe it is a dumb bylaw. But dumb or not, enforceable or not, it's on the books, and for a department head to have suggested that we remove it because it's not enforced seems pretty irresponsible to me. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my recollection of what we were told.
I don't share that recollection in
Okay,
particular.
very good.
No,
Very
I was
good.
going to say that I don't share that recollection. Now, I'll be real, I think there are parts of the current water protection bylaw that are unenforceable because you can't have salt, to my understanding, and now I'm working from memory, I don't think you're allowed to have salt on your property. Like, you can't have de-icing chemicals.
Stored outside.
That is not what the current bylaw says. Is there just, to my, again, working from memory, I knew a lot more about this 2 weeks ago. But working from memory, no, you just can't have them, because one of the things we added was you could store them inside or have appropriate mitigation otherwise, if it wasn't. And so I think there's some aspects that are, I do believe there's some aspects that are enforceable, but I did also speak with Adam again about why, what is the logic behind this? And a lot of it was the fact that the current bylaw is not, really what I presented forward at town meeting was the notion that we have, the current bylaw isn't modern in what it refers to or how it addresses things, and that it bans a lot of things we don't need to ban anymore because we have engineering that can address it. I think as part of Mr. Harris's, I think a lot of that will fall out regardless in Mr. Harris's line by line, because then we'll be able to look at things that are changing,
I agree.
and then we'll know if it matters. So whether or not things are being changed because they're unenforceable, or because it's Tuesday, or for whatever, or because they just don't make sense in this age. I think once we have that, we'll be better equipped to do that deep dive. So I would suggest that I think you're right, it's worth looking at in detail, but I think we can hold off until we have the product from Mr. Harris, because if he's going to do that for us, then that's the first big step that he is probably better equipped to deal with than at least some of us are. But I'm open to thinking differently. I will say that Fran McNamara has said they'd be happy to come to a board meeting. So they'd be happy to meet with me or meet with the board to discuss it as well. Now, I'm going to reach out about the Zone 2 and Zone 1 thing, but I think meeting with him once we have that line by line would also be helpful as well.
I agree.
Okay, great. I'm kind of getting nods, so. So while we're waiting on that, what do we want to look at next? Is Amanda's pushing for solar, or Ms. Rita's pushing for solar? Do we want to go with solar? I'm comfy with that, because I do think we heard from I hear from a lot of people doing the work in town that our sign bylaw is very difficult and not particularly great. I hear from the people at town meeting, they seemed excited about the notion of fixing our solar bylaw. I've had constituents writing to me as well. I know some of you have received emails as well about potential changes to solar bylaw from concerned constituents. So maybe that's the next place to look. Is that where we want to look next, or do we want to pivot differently? And if the answer is, Matt, just pick something so we can go forward, I'm willing to do that, but
Well, I'll tell you what, I keep little packets of information in my house in different little spots. So whenever we want to pick up any one of these things, I should be able to find that little packet that applies to any one of these at any given time. And if you let me know which one you want to look at first, I can pull that packet out and add to it. That's, I think they're all worth looking at, and I'm hard pressed to be able to justify prioritization of any single one of them. I'll tell you something, the ZBA hearing coming up on the 13th of December for 1325 Mass Ave, he's wanting to go from 25-foot setback to 5-foot setback. And maybe it's justifiable, and maybe they'll do it, and maybe it's unreasonable to
what
require.
is that project?
It's the earth removal turned into 10 contractor garage.
Ah, okay. Just looking to go to 5-foot setback overall, or
Instead of
on,
the 25,
but, I mean, on any specific,
to ZBA, for a sign,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, for a sign, okay,
yep.
got it.
So, and I haven't really kept up with ZBA hearings a lot, but I understand that there are numerous applications on a regular basis, fairly regular basis. So, and one other thing about signs that I'm going to mention is it's not in the sign bylaw, it's in the Village Center District zoning, is that I'm not quite sure how we did it, but we outlawed neon signs in the Village Center. And that's impacted Bad Larry's business considerably. So he says. But, and that's, I mentioned that just to say that everything there is to do about signs is not necessarily in the sign
I
bylaw.
think that's a fair point. Tim, Mr. Wilson, I've seen you almost speak several times.
The one that I've got at the moment, this is more a memory refresher. When we were talking about solar, the main thing that we were concerned about was how it is that we categorize large-scale solar. It being, we had it as actually, no, we currently have it as,
As 10 kilowatt hours, but, so
Kilowatts.
we have it by electrical production,
footprint.
not by footprint.
right.
That is the main one that has been discussed in meetings. We've all received emails from concerned constituents about other aspects of solar, and that has come up in prior meetings while we've been on the board as well, about things like this concern about if Lunenburg should disallow greenfield solar, which is effectively, for those at home, when you take a bunch of healthy trees and chainsaw them to put down solar panels. Super paraphrased, but they, as opposed to putting it on roofs or other man-made things, basically plowing nature to make solar versus putting them on top of stuff that's already plowed nature. And I don't know enough about our solar bylaw off the top of my head to know that there's other issues. My understanding is there likely are some other issues to look at holistically. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay. Because I remember disincentivizing greenfield solar was something something I asked questions about before. So I think as a general topic, there's a lot there that I do want to tackle. The other question I was going to have, and this is just something that's been turning around the last few meetings, where do our requirements or approvals or enforcement mechanisms, do we have bylaws regarding stormwater? And like how we expect it to be calculated, or what happens if it's not up to its advertised or its sold standards?
I believe that is all in the stormwater bylaw. I
Okay.
don't think that's addressed in other places. I'm not 100% on that.
What exactly was the question?
So the thing that I've been wondering about, and this was kind of highlighted in our last meeting, in terms of what is measured for when somebody creates a stormwater plan is just the rain that comes down directly. And seeing as this is an older town and we've got a lot of places that don't have, like, they're already there, they already exist, they have whatever stormwater systems they do, it means we're going to have a lot of flow that doesn't come directly from rain. It comes from other properties. It comes from impervious structures. What do we have, or what can we have to effectively, like, bump up capture requirements or anything of that nature? What can we do to make it so that you're not just not having an impact when you want to build something, but you're actually improving the situation in town if you want to build something, if you want to create a development or something of that nature? I think is the kind of end of what I'm looking for is how do we incentivize or make it so that new developments, new buildings, new whatever actually makes things better instead of just maintaining a status quo.
I'm getting lacking an expert here.
Yeah.
I'm getting the impression that we're somewhat constrained by mass law on that one, because it's like the max extent practicable. And we could make a really stringent rule,
Yeah.
but then the answer is that just isn't practicable for single-family homes and small, which is a lot of what we're going to be seeing. Now, a lot of what we have been seeing. Maybe things will be different in the future, again, post-master plan if we do zoning changes or anything. But I will also tell you that there's interest from various committees and boards in the town about stormwater overall, because the stormwater running down roads and then flooding other people's yards isn't a fiscal issue for the town, and we're going to be spending a lot of money. And I'll ask during the committee reports about, are we looking at basically what has the stormwater task force had to do and say on everything recently, and where are we with a stormwater utility idea or anything else? But
Sure.
yeah, so, and I know the answer may very well be not much at all, and that's fine. But
We've had one meeting since I started on the stormwater task force. So, yeah, not much.
does the stormwater task force belong to us?
I don't think so.
They're not one of ours. Okay.
It
We
started
were
out,
supposed to have a meeting 2 weeks ago, but it got canceled.
Why?
Somebody wasn't able to be in attendance, I think. Or no, it was a agenda submission incident.
you know, that group started out as a 7-member with 3 ex officios, and is it down to 3 or is it back up to 5 yet?
There were 3 of us at the one meeting that I have attended.
So I'm pretty sure it's down to 3 members, from a 7 with the 3 ex officio to start with. The problem there was that I'm not going to get into it. I did find that documentation I was talking about,
Okay.
and I'd like to share it with you,
Yes, please.
from my tenure on the stormwater
Would you
task force.
mind sending it along to me as well?
I've got 2 notebooks that are like this thick.
Oh, okay.
So I certainly can sit down with you. Or I
yeah.
can scan some stuff.
In that case, sometime when we're both in the planning office, I'd love the dime store version.
Okay.
Because I don't have that in me right now.
But I did confirm, you open up my notebook, and the very first thing is the charter of that group, and at the very end of the thing, it is to come up with a stormwater utility. So,
So there's been expressed interest on capital planning from a member of the finance committee, and I have heard from members of the select board who also may be interested. So I think there's a potential for, I think there is interest about stormwater in the bigger sense in the town,
Sure.
but, and it may well be that we need to lead the charge on that, but that is going to be a bigger thing than I think we're looking at doing as a board in isolation, putting forward. I mean, everything should be kind of cross-pollinated, but I think that specifically, if only there was some kind of task force to look at that. And the answer may be we look at the group in charge of the Stormwater Task Force and have that discussion. And if we can get that info, I'm happy to approach that group either at a meeting or as appropriate to say, hey, what's going on here? Can we talk about this and see what we can do? Because this has been coming up.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to attend that meeting if we figure out a select board or whoever.
Okay.
I did at one point forward it was a Zoom for stormwater data management. I don't know if you got that. I actually loosely attended that Zoom, and I mean, I think it was fairly informative, but a lot of it was kind of salesy of like pitching their data management system for stormwater.
Okay.
I did find it kind of interesting, just from the very little knowledge that I have. But integrating, it's kind of stormwater data management and then integrating with our GIS system. And I can forward along a couple of the emails that I had about it. Of course, you know, the analysis stuff probably costs a pretty penny, but, you know, maybe in our findings might be able to have something that's useful.
Yeah, if you would forward along, that'd be great, please, thank you, because we at least have that info then and can kind of squirrel it away. I'm going to steer us back.
Can I follow up on that?
Oh, please.
So that sounds like great input, and I'm glad you mentioned it, but I would like you to follow up. The MRPC had a data collection program that I believe they put together, and a utility that we had already been using, so just make sure that that's not cross-purpose, or we don't already have that capability from MRPC.
Great,
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to loop us back to the notion of what do we want to look at next? And I'm asking in part so that way I can start looking at, I mean, we all can, but so I can start looking at bylaws for something and tossing together ideas and sending out examples to then discuss at meetings. Do we want to, I'm hesitant to say let's dive into stormwater next, because I think that's a bigger fish to fry. We may want some more coordination on first.
Sure.
I,
What kind of, like, how many things do we think we can work on successfully between now and the next town meeting? Like, are we looking at one item, 2 items?
in my ideal world, I'd love us to see 2 items plus continuance of water.
Okay.
I don't know that that's feasible, but I think it is. Again, it's part of it's just going to depend where our cadence will be a little more interrupted because we don't have a full-time land use director to
Sure.
do all this pretty work, and so there's more on us, and we have day jobs.
My preference of the kind of things we've gone over, I'd like to tackle the solar. I'd like to tackle the scenic roads, but I do understand, like, if we do want to hold off on that for a bit, signs does also feel like a good place to put our energy at the moment, something that we can tackle and you know, probably get squared away for the next meeting. Yeah.
I'm kind of getting nods-ish from people. Is that, all right. So I'm going to start directing us towards solar and signs in kind of that order, and we'll see how those flesh out. Banger. Okay, great. That concludes the board discussion section for me. I think we're good. Now, let's see what else we can do quickly, because we've had some good discussion tonight, but we also have lives. Minutes approval, not at all trying to encourage us to be shorter than we need.
I only see in what I downloaded today, only the 255. I don't have the 274 Prospect.
Oh, I only had the
Or-
274.
Nope, yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I have that backwards.
The 255 is not available yet.
Okay.
That was on the agenda, but am I correct? Okay.
Not yet,
But the-
but next, we'll have all the things next meeting, but yes.
All right, great. So we're looking at minutes approval for our meeting on 10/23/23 and the public hearing for 274 Prospect Street on 10/23/23.
Do we have our regular minutes for 10:23?
Because 255 wasn't complete.
Got
Oh.
you. So it's just the
The only thing that's
274.
not-
Okay.
So it's just 274, my
Yes,
bad.
yes.
Okay, great. I didn't review it too carefully because I don't vote for meetings I'm not there for. So when people are ready, I would accept a motion for the minutes for the public hearing for 274 Prospect Street on October 23rd, 2023.
So moved.
I think you have to move to approve or something.
Oh, do it?
I said about it.
I mean, okay. So I'll motion to approve the minutes for the public hearing of 274 Prospect Street from October 23rd, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will abstain. Very good. And we may have been fine with the so moved. I just would hate to get us caught on some weird technicality. All right, committee reports. Master Plan Steering Committee.
We have not had an additional meeting since the previous planning board meeting.
All right. Open Space Ad Hoc Committee.
Likewise, there's no report, we haven't met.
Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee.
Likewise, and it's going to be for the next one as well.
All right, Agricultural Commission.
So we weren't able to get a quorum, so we didn't hold a meeting.
Capital Planning Committee. Ooh, Nellie, it's capital planning season. Well, it's capital ranking season, and that will move into after the new year to capital planning, a novel approach for the Capital Planning Committee that the members of the committee are very enthused about. Next meeting is Wednesday, where we hear from, I think it's facilities, and then we are going to have the whole deliberate and rank meetings heading into and through December. Economic Development Committee has not met. I think it was a quorum issue last time. We'll be meeting, I want to say it's this Thursday. I'd have to double check my calendar. Stormwater Task Force.
Have not met.
Very good. Well, not very good, but very what it is. Montechusett Regional Planning Commission.
We have not met since the last meeting. We meet in the beginning of the month, so.
Well, it's on here regardless, so I'm going to say it out loud every time. Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee.
Same deal, beginning of the month, so it'll be in the next couple of weeks for both of them.
Fair enough. Director's item. We don't have a director. Meeting schedule. All board meetings are held at Town Hall at 6 PM unless otherwise indicated, and our upcoming scheduled meetings are December 11th and January 8th, because the other meeting is like pretty much Christmas. That would happen otherwise.
I think it is Christmas.
Yeah, I think it is. Like, I thought so, but, yeah, so December 11th is our next meeting, and then everyone enjoy your almost month off until January 8th. Ongoing items, master plan. Last I knew, I think we're at 50 some odd responses on survey number 2. And again, if you're out there watching, please, please, please go to planlunenburg.org and fill out the second survey. Keep filling out surveys when they come out. What's happening is the first survey gathered a lot of info, and now they're asking people to rank how much they agree or disagree with statements that were provided in the first survey. So over time, these surveys help narrow down what people in Lunenburg are looking for. The more responses, the better. There's paper copies, I believe, at the senior center and at the library and at the planning office, but you can also, and it's even more convenient for everyone involved, if you can fill it out online, please do fill it out online at planlunenburg.org. Josie and I have been meeting with Over Under et al. in the semi-monthly calls. There, we've been having some talk about trying to get people out, get some of the over-under materials and everything, and get people out in front of stores for the holiday shopping season to try to drum up interest in the master plan and get people filling out surveys and just try to get it out there in community. There's also been discussion in those meetings, and this will come back to the Master Plan Steering Committee, about the potential for maybe some kind of winter event in February that could be rather than just everyone come to this location and see a presentation, maybe a more community gathering type event as a way of getting people out, and while they're there, hey, why don't you learn more about the master plan too? Again, just trying to reach people and meet people where they are and gather community feedback, because that's important. Aquifer Protection District, we've discussed. MBTA communities, I attended an info session, or like the info session, the monthly office hours, and what I learned is, as the town's primary contact, I need to get more info, so I'll be reaching out to our contact at MRPC this week to start getting more info about where the whole process is, because I was left with MRPC is generally handling it. And that may be true, but I don't have enough info to feel comfy with that. So I'll be getting back to us once I know more. Because there are communities that are now doing things and making plans for what they're eventually going to have to bring to town meetings. And we're not there, but again, I don't know where in that process we are and how much has been centralized away from us initially or not. I know there's been changes in expectations lowered because we're a rural community, and I'll get back to us once I have that info. Lunenburg Municipal Buildings, if one of these is relevant, say so. Town Environmental Support Policy, Pondview Commons, haven't heard much. I will say it's interesting that at capital planning, on the topic of Lunenburg Municipal Buildings, the school department has done a good job of kind of figuring out a capital plan for what it takes to maintain Turkey Hill. Because that has to factor into the overall municipal buildings plan in a big sense, because, well, one, you can't build a new school until we address those other issues, because we got a debt ceiling we got to deal with. As well as there's been my understanding is, I'm going to say that there has been some talk about should Turkey Hill potentially be a future community center, and what would that look like? Or if we get grants to refurbish the school, and that locks it into being a school for 10 years with some of those grants, what does that look like? What does it look like just to get it to the point we can hand it over as a community center? There's a lot of unknowns and millions of dollars Turkey Hill would require in figuring out what that would be. Public comment? Seeing none. Board comment?
I have, I want to follow up on the MBD, the municipal building design and the Turkey Hill thing. I think I mentioned it at a previous committee report, but we had a joint meeting between building design and school committee, and they got chastised pretty hard about passing off buildings that were useless. And there was a very strong request, and I think it was an agreed upon request, to start looking into maintaining it better and having a better usable building passed off. And my understanding was that the MSBA funding does require them to keep it in use for 10 years. So, and it was discussed about the potential for TCP coming out of the spotlight and Turkey Hill going into the spotlight, but again, these are all just discussions.
Yeah, and that was effectively what came out at the capital planning committee was kind of looking at capital plan funding for what kind of funding would it take to do that for Turkey Hill? And not for the definitive, and that's what this will be done, because the answer may be that the amount, it takes so many millions to get Turkey Hill to the point it is maintainable, that the actual answer is a bulldozer. And that may not be the case, that's all. But the school department has put forward numbers on a 10-year plan saying, yeah, we'd have to look at ADA compliance, we have to look at replacing boilers, we have to look at an electrical upgrade, we have to look at all of these things. I also happen to be on the Turkey Hill, what is it? Group of School Advisory Committee, that's it. And I'll tell you, got to get a tour. Kind of interesting seeing 2 outlets per classroom. And I'm not faulting the school department for that. I'm not really, it is what it is, you know? It's an old building. But imagine having a full classroom and 2 outlets, so that's 4 places, 4 things you can plug into. And you know that wiring isn't taking the same load a modern wiring will. Yeah, they're doing a lot with what they got, and what they got is 50 years old. All right. Any other board comment?
I have
Please.
two more. So one of them, another thing to look at rather than bylaws, I've been saying forever that we're not proactive. This town doesn't do anything to save itself, to get it. I mean, we have a hard enough time digging ourselves out of the holes that we put ourselves in, let alone trying to look ahead and seeing where the pitfalls might come and actually being proactive to try to avoid some of them. And I'm getting really disgusted in being so repetitive, but I think this 40B, Pondview Commons, I think that's a practical guarantee. I don't think that there's very much that we're going to be able to do about it. And I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I think that that's going to be here. And if we don't start looking at it now, then we're going to do the usual, oh my God, look at what's happening. What are we going to do? Well, let's start looking at it now. One of the things that I'd like to look at is when they run water and sewer down, however they get it to that Howard Street project, it's going there, one way or another. I think that we should start looking at, in conjunction with the sewer commission, what the most beneficial route would be, who's going to benefit more, what are we going to get the best benefit out of by being forced to run it there, in what path. I mean, we could get on Highland and Northfield, we get down Route 2, not Route 2, we get down 13, I think it goes Beale Street up, yeah, so the route, the zoning. The zoning is important. I think that we've got very limited commercial zoning in town, and I think that our named routes that are state-owned would be ideal because they've got the highest volumes of traffic. They've got the easiest access, and more importantly, they should be having all of this infrastructure. Looking at like the very first page of the zoning bylaw says that we're charged with figuring out the best uses of the infrastructure and where we should put it. Well, I've been on here 10-plus years, and I gotta tell you that I'd be hard-pressed to give you any good number of times that we've actually sat down and had a good discussion about anything like that. I can't imagine that it's not gonna happen, and if we don't start looking at it now, then shame on us. I guess that's basically it. My thrust towards zoning is that if there is a sewer main down Chase Road and it is within commercial zoning, then that sewer main cannot be used to develop residential housing units. Now, regardless of how that just sounded to everybody who just heard it, we've been talking about a deficient amount of business development in town. If we provide infrastructure and so one big concern about providing infrastructure is, oh, houses, 40Bs. Well, we're already getting the 40B. No worries there. And that's going to force us to install more than 3 miles worth of sewer. So a lot of that 3 miles is going to be in an area that could be commercially zoned, and it is already readily adaptable to commercial structures, buildings, enterprise. I just want to say that it is feasible.
It is my understanding that that is one of the things the master plan would be looking at.
2 years is going to be too late,
Okay. For the,
I think.
for the best direction, well, that's fair. So you're thinking we should have a plan for the sewer before we get confirmation that it's going to happen? So that in that instance, if it does happen, we can say, here's where it should go.
I think that we should reach out to the sewer commission, and we should have a discussion about what their thoughts are, because, you know, it's kind of in our ballpark, but, you know, the sewer commission, they know all the details, and they would be able to answer a lot of questions that we might have about, you know, what would be the best route, if they're interested in our input. You know, if they want to work together with us on it, if they think it's an important thing, I guess. I'm really, and it's nothing new. It's gone on since I've been involved, is that these groups, we seldom get together, we seldom talk. The last time we had a group discussion with multiple boards in this room was like 6 years ago, and it was on the Pondview Commons. I think that we need more cross-communication, and
I do believe that was 2 years ago, not 6. I was on the board.
when Carluck hit the ground? You weren't there?
Not, no, but that wasn't Pondview oh, the previous iteration of, okay, no, never mind, I understand. Yep.
Sorry.
I was thinking of a different Pondview Commons meeting about the current iteration of the project. Now, I know what you mean.
I think it
Okay.
was more than 6, but I'm
Yep,
not
no,
sure.
yeah. I don't disagree with the concept. I don't know what we can do now, but I'm open to us reaching out to the sewer commission and seeing if they would like to consult with us on it. I think we would have to, I would think the steps for that would be, and I'm open to other readings, to speak with Mr. Harris first to find out if we even have, because it may be that we're not going to get any say in how that sewer goes. And if that's the case, making a plan may be irrelevant. And
That's a possibility.
but if we may have a say, then it would probably make sense to reach out to sewer and possibly ZBA, since they're the ones who control that process.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about that, or if you agree or not.
I can't imagine that we wouldn't have a say on the path to get to the project that's requiring it, but I've been totally flabbergasted and wrong multiple times, so.
I am happy to check with Mr. Harris the next time I sit with him, but, I mean, that doesn't preclude you from having that conversation first if you wish, and then I don't have to.
Okay.
Just to find out what the,
I'm pretty sure he'll be in the office on Wednesday.
cool.
Very
Okay.
good. Thank you.
I am less likely to be swinging by the office on Wednesday because I have other stuff going on that day, so if you're there, great, and if I can't swing by, I will.
Okay.
Cool. All right,
So my last thing,
please.
so I touched upon it before in the public hearing, but this is kind of in general. So the Wetlands Protection Act is 310 CMR. Did a fire alarm? Very good. And so the way they applied to the Conservation Commission with their notice of intent was through a limited project. So it's a special condition within the Wetlands Protection Act. The verbiage of that, and that was 1053, so it's 310 CMR 1053, Section 3, subsection E, which reads, "The construction and maintenance of a new roadway, driveway of minimum legal and practical width acceptable to the planning board, where reasonable alternative means of access from a public way to an upland area of the same owner is unavailable." That's not the case here. "Such roadway or driveway shall be constructed in a manner which does not restrict the flow of water. Reasonable alternative means of access may include any previously or currently available alternatives, such as realignment or reconfiguration of the project to conform to the Wetlands Protection Act, the general requirements, or otherwise minimize adverse effects on resource areas. The issuing authority may require the applicant to utilize access over an adjacent parcel of land currently or formerly owned by the applicant, or in which the applicant has or can obtain an ownership interest. The applicant shall design the roadway or driveway in according to the minimum length and width acceptable to the planning board, and shall present reasonable alternative means of access to the board." So, this is not within our stormwater permit. This is within the Wetlands Protection Act. This is the clause that the conservation agent, administrator, had we had one when this application came in, should have seen and noticed. But, and also, the general regulation says something about, I just closed it, says something about the, it must be a plan gone through the planning board subdivision approval process, and I already outlined this before, but there's obviously a requirement for the involvement of planning board in this notice of intent. Would you agree? I mean, from what I just read?
I would agree, but I also know that laws don't always mean what I think they mean, but I get where you're coming from, and that makes sense to me. I'm happy to follow up with Richard and say, do we understand this correctly? And if so, then we should turn to Concom about it and say,
Okay.
hey, we
Sure.
should be looped in here.
So this is the regulation. So the CMR, the Common Massachusetts Regulations, CMR 310, but the statute is the MGL 131, Section 40, and it iterates pretty much the same thing.
Could you give me those?
So at MGL 131, I believe, I can follow up if I'm incorrect, but MGL 131, Section 40, that's, I'm not quite sure exactly how to call that,
No, that's fine. I can,
but that's the statute that
yep.
it comes from. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
Nope, that's fine. We can check with Richard as well about that, because if the answer is that's something that should have been done, we can reach out and say, hey, we'd like to be looped in on this and on future things.
Well, it is, and I'll also, since I gave you reference to that, I want to mention, well, no, I can follow up with that.
Okay, yeah, you can follow up, send me the email, I'll
Yep.
put it in. All right, great.
And I was thinking something about, official liaison, but I don't need to. If I go to a Conservation Commission meeting and I zoom in and I watch it, I can come back and talk about it here.
Yeah.
As a member or whatever. So I guess, I was thinking something along the lines of a liaison to work with them at their meetings to discuss my understanding of our supposed involvement, but apparently I don't know everything that I need to about this, especially because I think we should reach out to Richard, to town council, and to the building official about this.
All right, I will add them. I will make sure to get, set up some time with town council for, during next office hours for that as well.
Great, and I would be more than happy to sit in on that with you.
Great, wonderful. All right, any other board comment? In that case, my friends, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. PlanLunenburg.org. Go there, tell us what you think, please. Have a wonderful night.
Recording stopped.